Shalom, 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 Most High in Christ bless. Today is February 11th, 2023. We are glad to be here once again to bring forth a Sabbath class on the Sabbath day. According to Genesis chapter 1, the day begins in the evening at night. In the dark hours, the day begins, and the day concludes with the daylight hours. So at the end of the daylight hours, the day comes to a close. So last night, I don't know, 6:30-ish, 7 o'clock-ish, something like that, the Sabbath day began. Tonight, when the sun goes down, and the darkness takes hold, we move into the next day according to the Bible. You can read Genesis chapter 1, verse 5, verse 8, verse 13, verse 19, verse 23, verse 31, to get the understanding, to see the pattern and how the biblical writers wrote that, so that you can understand how we understand what the Bible is saying. So anyway, happy Sabbath. Thanks for being here with us. Click the subscribe button, click the notification button, click the like button, share this video with somebody. With no further ado, we're going to get into laws and then get into the topic. Here we go. The laws, Ecclesiasticus chapter 39, verse 1. But he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High and is occupied in the meditation thereof will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient and be occupied in prophecies. He will keep the sayings of the renowned men, and where subtle parables are, he will be there also. He will seek out the secrets of grave sentences and be conversant in dark parables. He shall serve among great men and appear before princes. He will travel through strange countries, for he hath tried the good and the evil among men.
Transgressors must not testify. Exodus 23 and 1. Thou shalt not raise a false report, but not thine hand, put not thy hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness.
Relatives of the litigants must not testify. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 16. The fathers shall not be put to death for the children, neither shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin.
Not to testify falsely. Deuteronomy 19 and 16. And if a false witness rise up against any man to testify against him that which is wrong.
Punish the false witness as they try to punish the defendant. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 19. Then shall ye do unto him as he had thought to have done unto his brother. So shalt thou put evil away from among you.
Act according to the ruling of the Sanhedrin. Deuteronomy 17 and 11. According to the sentence of the law which they shall teach thee, and according to the judgment which they shall tell thee, thou shalt do. Thou shalt not decline from the sentence which they shall show thee, to the right hand nor to the left.
Not to deviate from the word of the Sanhedrin. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 11. According to the sentence of the law which they shall teach thee, and according to the judgment which they shall tell thee, thou shalt do. Thou shalt not decline from the sentence which they shall show thee, to the right hand, nor to the left.
Not to add to the Torah commandments, or their all explanations. Deuteronomy 13:1. If there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder.
Not to diminish from the Torah any commandments, in whole or in part. Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 1. If there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder.
Not to curse your father and mother. Not to curse your father and mother, yeah. Exodus 21:17. And he that curseth is his father or his mother shall surely be put to death.
Not to strike your father and mother. Exodus chapter 21, verse 15. And he that smiteth his father or his mother shall be surely put to death.
Respect your father or mother. Exodus 20:12. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee.
Fear your father and mother. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 3. Ye shall fear every man his mother and his father, and keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God.
Not to be a rebellious son. Deuteronomy 21:18. If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him, will not hearken unto them.
Mourn for relatives. Leviticus chapter 10, verse 19. And Aaron said unto Moses, Behold, this day have they offered their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord. And such things have befallen me. And if I had eaten the sin offering today, should it have been accepted in the sight of the Lord?
The priest must not defile himself for any relative.
The high priest.
I'm sorry, let me do that over. The high priest must not defile himself for any relative. Leviticus 21:11. Neither shall he go into any dead body, nor defile himself for his father or his mother.
The high priest must not enter under the same roof as a corpse. Leviticus chapter 21, verse 11. Neither shall he go into any dead body, nor defile himself for his father or for his mother.
A Cohen must not defile himself by going to funerals or cemeteries for anyone except relatives. Leviticus 21:1. And the Lord said Moses, speak unto the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say unto them, there shall none be defiled for the dead among his people.
Appoint a king from Israel. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 15. Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom the Lord thy God shall choose. One from among thy brethren shalt thou set king over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother.
Not to appoint a foreigner as king over the nation of Israel. Deuteronomy 17:15. Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom the Lord thy God shall choose. One from among thy brethren shall thou set king over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother.
The king must not multiply too many wives to himself. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 17. Neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away. Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold.
The king must not have too many horses. Deuteronomy 17:16. But he shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt, to the end that he should multiply horses. For as much as the Lord hath said unto you, ye shall henceforth return no more that way.
The king must not have too much silver and gold. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 17. Neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away. Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold.
Destroy the 7 Canaanite nations. Deuteronomy 20 and 17. But thou shalt utterly destroy them, namely the Hittites, the Hittites and the Amorites, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. The Hittite, can you say that one for me?
Hivites.
Hivites and the Jebusites.
Jebusites.
Oh, Jebusites, thanks. As the Lord thy God hath commanded thee.
Not to let any of the 7 Canaanite nations remain alive. Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 16. But of the cities of these people, which the Lord thy God doth give thee for an inheritance, thou shalt save alive nothing that breatheth.
Wipe out the memory of Amalek. Deuteronomy 25 and 19. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God hath given thee rest from all thy enemies round about, in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Thou shalt not forget it.
Remember what Amalek did to the children of Israel. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 17. Remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way, when ye were come forth out of Egypt.
Not to forget Amalek's atrocities in ambush on our journey from Egypt in the desert. Deuteronomy 25 and 19. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God hath given thee rest from all thy enemies round about, in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt not blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Thou shalt not forget it.
All right. And Lord willing, we will start with 599 next week. Lord willing, or next time. We'll start with 599 next time. Okay. And then today's topic, the title of today's topic, Native Americans too have faced Negro atrocities. Native Americans too have faced Negro atrocities. That's TOO. Native Americans too have faced Negro atrocities. Okay. And so with this class, we want to discuss the Northern Kingdom. And we want to give some history that allows us to know that the Native Americans, Hispanics, that they too are the Israelites that the Bible speaks of. So go to 2nd Esdras chapter 13. We're going to read verse 40 through 45.
Say 2nd Esdras chapter 13.
2nd Esdras chapter 13. We're going to read verse 40 through 45.
Okay, 2nd Esdras chapter 13, verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Osei the king, whom Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might keep their
statutes.
Say that again.
statutes. That they
Okay,
might
yeah.
keep
Now I got stuck
statutes.
somewhere. That they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow place of the river.
By the narrow passages of the river. Go ahead.
Oh, it's got place on here. For the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely, of a year and a half. And the same region is called Ashereth.
Arsareth. Okay.
Awesome.
So this time period, we are in the 700s BC. We're in the time period 700 BC. The northern kingdom of Israel, remember, for the history of the Israelites, you'll have to read the book of Kings and Second Kings in particular. And this is where we see that the split happens among the nation of Israel. The northern kingdom, as time would go on, they went into captivity first. They went into Assyrian captivity. And then about the time of Cyrus, King Cyrus through Darius, about this time, we're still in 700s BC, the northern kingdom requested to leave the land. And they went to a land that it says that no man had never dwelt there before. So this would not be, let me get a map. Bear with me. Okay, so here's the known world at the time of our biblical studies. And, of course, the Israelites, they are here in Israel. The Assyrians had taken them over into this region here. So the Assyrians had taken them over into this region right here, okay, where they were enslaved. We get to this passage in 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 40 through 45. And it says that they took the Euphrates River. They'd taken the river, the narrow passage, and the Euphrates River is right here. So here we have the Euphrates River. Zooming in so we can see Euphrates River.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the name of it right there. Euphrates River.
Yeah.
Okay, and so throughout this entire river, they label it Euphrates River. I'm gonna zoom back out. So if you keep your eye on this water right there, that river, okay, you can still see it. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. I'm gonna zoom out. Zoom out. We can see where that river. Ultimately, if we zoom in, we see that this river drops into this Gulf. Okay, the Persian Gulf. Drops into the Persian Gulf. So what they did was they came down into this Gulf, and they would use this waterway to come on out. and they would have commuted around this way, coming around the coast, because all of this is occupied. There are people living here to the east. So they came around, said it took them a year and a half. So they would have stayed close to the African coast so that they can stock up on provisions, food, what have you, with the inhabitants, the coastal inhabitants. And they would have come around, the bottom of Africa. You see South Africa, okay? It would have come on back up, and then just as there's a passage, there's some books that talks about calm places in this region of the Atlantic Ocean. So they would have taken that calm passage in some slave books. I recall reading how they talk about the waters being calm. And so they would have taken this passage and came on into the Americas, okay? And whether or not they landed here in South America, landed in the coast, and came on up to North America, they came into the Americas is where they went to. But here is the Jewish encyclopedia. Here is Osiris. In this, they use an S for the spelling, whereas we take a look again for 2nd Esdras chapter 13 and verse 45. Let me put that on the screen for everybody. Okay, so the difference is one letter. That doesn't change. And when you read the books in the Apocrypha, we do see changes in spelling. We see the Greek spelling of some of these words. So the same region is called Osiris. Same region is called Osiris, 2nd Esdras chapter 13, verse 45. Let's go back to our Jewish encyclopedia. So only one letter difference. If you would please read this for us and for our followers.
Osiris by Morris Jastron Jr. What is that? Kaufman or Kaufman Kohler?
Kaufman
Kohler. The name of the land beyond the great river, far away from the habitation of man, in which the 10 tribes of Israel will dwell, observing the laws of Moses until the time of the resurrection.
Until the time of the restoration. Until the time of the restoration. Until all things are put back in order as they should be. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm going to start back up. According
to 4th Esdras, which is 2nd Esdras, chapter 13, verse 45. Go ahead, continue.
Okay, I think I'm down here. The name.
Right here.
Okay, thanks for bringing me back. Columbus identified America with this land.
Say that again.
Columbus identified America with this land.
Say it one more time.
Columbus identified America with this land.
So according to Christopher Columbus, this place, Osiris, is the same place as America. So according to Columbus, when they came around Africa, they crossed on over, they crossed over into America. They came into America. Now, whether or not it's America proper, North America, whether or not it's the Americas, North and South America, I'm not going to attempt to make a claim.
Okay.
But in terms of the text, these folks who came into the Americas, and here's what's interesting about this passage. What's interesting about this passage is that verse 41. Please read verse 41 again.
All right. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt.
Where never mankind dwelt. Where never mankind dwelt. Where never mankind dwelt. Okay, so where are we talking about? Because it said they left the multitude of the heathen. The heathen, the multitude of the heathen is here in this region. All this connected land space. This is where the multitude of the heathen are. They came down through the narrow passage. They came here where never mankind dwelt. This is where they came. All right. So who are we talking about? We're talking about Native Americans. Okay. We're talking about the Aztecs. We're talking about the Incas. We're talking about the Mayans. Okay. We're talking about all of those individuals. All right. Go to, stop sharing my screen. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 32.
Deuteronomy 28 and verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fill with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand.
Now, before I expound on verse 32, go to verse 15, Deuteronomy 28, verse 15.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God.
If the children of Israel would not listen and do according to what the Most High God instructed them, go ahead.
To observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
So verse 16 to verse 68 are curses that came upon the entire nation of the Israelites. Go to verse 46.
Deuteronomy 28 and verse 46.
Do 45 and 46, so we read it in context.
All right, Deuteronomy 28 and 46.
45.
I'm sorry, 45. Well, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments.
Because you would not listen to the voice of the Lord thy God, because you would not listen and do It's one thing to hear. It's one thing to hear. It's another thing to apply. If you're not applying, you're not hearkening. If you're not applying, you're not hearkening. Go ahead.
Where did I leave off at? I had to leave for a second.
Because
okay, to keep.
Because thou hearkenest not.
To the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he command thee.
Which he command thee. Go ahead.
And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever.
And upon thy seed forever. So we saw at verse 15 that if we wouldn't hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, all these curses were going to come upon the children of Israel and overtake the children of Israel. Verse 16 through verse 68 are curses that came upon the children of Israel. So no matter where the children of Israel had been scattered to throughout what the Bible says, the four corners of the world, no matter where they go, we can identify these curses with a race of people. We can identify who the children of Israel are, who they are today, even if their name has changed, which Jeremiah told us that the name would indeed change. Okay. Psalms told us the same thing. Let us make the name of Israel no more. So they thought to eradicate the Israelites. Okay. So back to verse 32, here are some curses that we can definitely identify with in terms of what the Native Americans experienced when the Europeans came to this soil. Okay, read 32 once again.
Deuteronomy 28 and 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in their hand, in thine
So what
hand.
We're talking about the capture of children, the capture of children going into slavery, the capture of children going into slavery. Okay, go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 33.
33. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always.
So we're talking about forced labor, and the production of your labor, you yourself, you won't enjoy it. Someone else is going to enjoy the fruit of your labor, the work of your hands. Okay, go to Deuteronomy 28, verse 36.
Deuteronomy 28 and 36. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there shalt thou serve other gods, who wood and stone.
So you're going to serve other gods, wood and stone. Now I can go very easy with this and say wood and stone. G, Christianity, the cross. Stone, G, Islam, the rock. Okay, wood and stone. And then in another passage in verse 64, is it 64? It says wood and stone again, religions newly brought up. Okay, you can read 64. We're not going to 64. Go to verse 43.
Deuteronomy 28 and 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low.
So when it says stranger, it's talking about someone other than your nation, someone other than your genetic kindred. Okay. We understand this now today. Like we got, we call them white people. We got black people. We use these words. This is the vernacular we use today. Look at that white man. Look at it. Look at that. And we call folks. There's a difference between African Americans and Africans. So among these different races, okay, if these folks do not belong to your race, according to the Bible, you are a stranger. You are a heathen. Okay, so it says the stranger shall get up very high and you brought down very low, is what was going to happen. Someone's going to come into your land, your habitation, and take over your habitation. Interesting. Go to verse 68.
Okay, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
Now that word Egypt, if you've been following us for any duration of time, you know that we will go to Exodus chapter 20, verse 2 to show that Egypt means slavery, captivity, bondage. Okay, so you're going to go into slavery again. That's what the word Egypt means. Read it again.
Deuteronomy 28, 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
With ships. So now the question becomes, historically speaking, what race of people went into slavery on slave cargo ships? What race of people went into slavery on slave cargo ships? Read on.
By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again.
The it is making reference to your homeland. Thou shalt see it no more again. As a nation, you shall see your homeland no more again. Go ahead.
And there ye shall be sold.
Where those boats docked and the ancestors got off. Go ahead.
And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
And no man shall buy you. No one's going to save you out of the atrocities that you are now experiencing. No one's going to save you. No one's going to redeem you. Okay. So these are some curses that we want to be thinking about as we dive into this. All right. So now let's dive in. Let's go to this book. The name of the book is called The Other Slavery. Let me get us back to the I think that's the best I can do. So the name of the book is called The Other Slavery, The Uncovered Story of Indian Enslavement in America by Andres Resendez. Okay. And this book, it's a new book. We see was copyrighted, published in 2016. Okay. So let's read a few bits. Now he's making the case, this book, he is bringing forth evidence that allows us to see that Native Americans went into slavery and was experiencing slavery at the same time that the Negro was experiencing slavery, and that the Native American was experiencing the atrocities at the same time that the Negro was experiencing atrocities. So let's take a look at some of the things he says. Here we go. All right. You want to read? You want me to read? Can you read?
I'll give it a try. It's pretty small for me. Okay. The very word slavery bring to mind African.
No. Right here,
right there. I'm
Where?
sorry. California may have entered the Union as a free soil state.
Mm-hmm.
But
what he's talking about is after the Mexican American War, that Congress, one of the things that they were discussing was California being a free state, free territory versus a slave territory, a slave state. Okay, and so so he's saying, yeah, right. It was free, all right. It was only free in word. Go ahead, start over again.
California may have entered the Union as a free soil state, but America's settlers soon discovered that the buying and selling of Indians was a common practice there.
Continue.
What do I hit the next page here? No, I can't do that for me.
As early as.
Okay, that I didn't know it flipped over like that. As early as 1846, the first American commander of San Francisco acknowledged that certain persons have been and still are imprisoning and holding to service Indians against their will, and warned the general public that the Indian population must not be regarded in the light of slaves.
Mm-hmm.
His pleas went unheeded. The first California legislature passed the Indian Act of 1850, which authorized the arrest of vagrant natives who could then be hired out, the highest bidder. This act also enabled white persons to go before a justice of the peace to obtain Indian children for indentured. According to one,
so what's going on? Just like in the South, they had vagrant laws, especially during the Jim Crow era. That they had these vagrant laws, which enabled white settlers to enslave Native Americans. So they kept using these legal tactics to bypass the fact that you could not that slavery was outlawed. Indentured servants were outlawed. They kept finding ways to get free labor out of people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so continue.
According to one scholarly estimate, this act may have affected as many as 20,000 California Indians, including 4,000 children kidnapped from their parents and employed primarily as domestic servants and farm laborers.
It said kidnapped from their parents. Kidnapped from their parents. Go back to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 32.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and filled with longing for them all the day long. And there shall
All,
be no
all the day long. All the day long. Go ahead.
and there shall be no might in thine hand.
You can't fight. What's going on? You had no physical might. You didn't have an army. You were outmanned. You were outpowered. You couldn't do anything about it. Go also to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 41.
Deuteronomy 28 and 41. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity.
What shall become of these children?
They shall go into captivity.
See that? See what the man is saying? He said these children were kidnapped from their parents and employed primarily as domestic servants and farm laborers. Okay, now let's go to the next thing that he talks about. Let's continue on. Bear with me. I'm looking for them. This is not good. Hold tight. Looking.
Excuse me.
Hold tight. Bear with me. Bear with me. Don't give up on me. There we go. Okay, so next thing he is talking about. So he talks about even up in the northern part of the country, Utah and what have you. And the Mormons come there to practice their religion and so forth. And they, they kind of don't want to participate in the ongoings of slavery. All right, start right here where it says hesitant at first.
Hesitant at first, the Mormons required some encouragement from slavers who tortured children with knives and hot irons to call attention to their trade and to elicit sympathy from potential buyers, or threatened to kill any children who went unpurchased.
Right? So they threatened to kill a child who was not sold. So either this child is going to be sold in slavery, or we're going to eliminate this child from existence. Go ahead.
Where was I? Brigham. Where was I? Oh, I'm sorry.
Brigham Young's.
Yeah, Brigham Young's. And then I flip over here.
Brigham Young's son-in-law.
Son-in-law, Charles Decker, witnessed the execution of Indian girls before he agreed to exchange his gun for other captives. In the end, the Mormons became buyers and even found a way to rationalize their participation in the human market.
Oh, sacred Mormons. The sacred Mormons in the end became buyers and even found a way to rationalize their participation in this human market. Here's what they say. Go ahead, continue.
Buy up the Laminate Indian child.
Children.
Say that again.
Children.
Oh, I said child. I'm sorry. Children. Brigham Young concealed his brethren in the town of Parwana. I'm sorry. I just made up a name. Parawan, thank you. And educated them and teach them the gospel so that many generations would not pass others. What is that? E-R-E?
So that many generations would not pass error, they should become a white and delightsome people. This was the same logic Spanish conquistadors had used in the 16th century to justify the acquisition of Indian slaves. So we're going to indoctrinate them to our ways. We're going to indoctrinate them to our ways. Okay, but this is here you're loving Mormons,
man.
You're loving Mormons. Okay, the beginnings of this other slavery are lost in the midst of time. Native peoples such as the Zapotecs, Mayas, and Aztecs took captives to use as sacrificial victims. So he's pointing out that, yes, Native Americans indeed practiced slavery amongst neighboring tribes. Okay, the Iroquois waged campaigns called mourning wars on neighboring groups to avenge and replace their dead. And Indians in the Pacific Northwest included male and female slaves as part of the goods sent by the groom to his bride's family to finalize marriages among the elite. Okay, so once again he's pointing out, but with the arrival of the Europeans, practices of captivity originally embedded in specific cultural contexts became commodified, expanded in unexpected ways, and came to resemble the kinds of human trafficking that are recognizable to us today. He said the game changed. The game changed when these Europeans came on the set. The game changed. Okay, let's go to the next. Oh my goodness, this is not. Pause. Go ahead and say something for me if you don't mind, while I'm trying to deal with this.
Yeah, well, in regards to the children being, you know, the human trafficking type of stuff, and it's something, man, that back then it seemed to be okay, but today, of course, you see how they do it, the human trafficking, which is horrible in and of itself. Yeah. Anyway, by the same matter, it's ironic that it's been done by a lot of the people down in Mexico, South America, trying to get the people over here to America to live so-called better in their own land that they used to have. They don't want them doing that, bringing them over here, but they're not bringing them over here to make them slaves. They're bringing them over here, or well, they're coming on their own, really, sometimes just to get a chance to live better. Yeah, but of course they're, making it a crime. Okay.
So here we are continuing with what was taking place historically, and like you said, this human trafficking still exists. But what we're doing, we're looking at the evidence, we're making a correlation so that we are able to identify that these people fit the curses that the Bible speaks about. Go ahead, where it starts with indeed.
Okay, let me try this again with these little bitty words. Indeed, Spain was to Indian slavery.
Let me see if I can enlarge the words for you. I may not be able to do much.
Okay, that's a little better.
How's that?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, go ahead.
Indeed, Spain was to Indian slavery what Portugal and later England were to African slavery. Ironically, Spain was the first imperial power to formally discuss and recognize the humanity of India in the early 1500s.
Pause. So this sentence right here, indeed, Spain was to Indian slavery what Portugal and later England were to African slavery. Okay, so very much he's saying, look, Spain participated heavily in the slavery of Native Americans, transporting them across the Atlantic Ocean. And so whereas the Negro came westward across the Atlantic Ocean, the Native American, he went eastward across the Atlantic Ocean. Okay. Let's go now. I don't know why this is doing this. Maybe it won't do it. Hopefully it won't do it. There we go. Good. There we go. I'm looking for the text. Yeah.
It's not highlighting it what you want.
Correct. I'm trying to find it so that you can read it. Oh, that's why. Okay. I'm looking for it. All right. There it is. You can't. Is that too small for you to see? Because
No,
if I make it,
I'm gonna continue to give it a shot here. We'll okay.
go ahead.
Indian slavery never went away, but rather, what is this? Never seen that word before. Coexist, yeah, coexisted with African slavery from the 16th all the way through the late 19th century.
Look at that. He says Indian slavery never went away. It coexisted. It existed during the same timeline with African slavery. Go on.
This realization made me ponder more seriously the question of visibility, because African slavery was legal.
Now
Its
here's
victims,
an interesting point that he makes right here. He states that he says, listen, because African slavery was legal, Indian slavery was not legal. There is a lot of documentation on African slavery. He said, but you gotta dig and dig and dig to find the evidence on Indian slavery. Go ahead.
its victims are easy to spot in the historical records. They were taxed on their entry into ports and appeared on bills of sales, wills, and other documents. Because these slaves had to cross the Atlantic Ocean, they were scrupulously, one could even say obsessively, counted along the way.
So the Negro, they said, was scrupulously or obsessively counted. So he's making the claim. He said there's tons of evidence, recorded evidence about the Negro. Go on. The final tally.
Yeah, the final tally of 2.5 million.
No, 12.5 million.
I saw the 12, but 2 came out my mouth. The final tally of 12.5 million enslaved Africans matters greatly because it has shaped our perception of the African slavery in the fundamental ways.
In fundamental ways, okay. He said, but and then he's gonna go on and he's going to talk and he's gonna show that as far as Native Americans, it's a smaller number. It's 2 million in comparison to the 12 million. He acknowledges that. But nonetheless, he definitely wants to hit the ball out the park by saying that, listen, Native Americans went through the same atrocities as African Americans. Okay, let's go to this next point of reference. Okay, so start right there where it says if we were to
add up all the Indian slaves taken in the New World from the time of Columbus to the end of the 19th century, the figure would run somewhere between 2.5 million slaves. That's the appendix. Such large number.
That's it, right? So this is what he's saying, okay? That we're talking about 2.5 to 5 million slaves, Native Americans, okay, who experienced these things. All right, and so he acknowledges that African Americans, indeed had a larger count, but he wants again to bring home the point that Native Americans experienced this thing. Okay, let's go to this next one. All right.
In the Caribbean, how do I say that?
In the Caribbean basin,
along the Gulf Coast and across large regions of northern Mexico and the American Southwest, native populations were reduced by 70, 80, or even 90% through a combination of warfare, famine.
So watch this. Look what he's saying. He says, of all the different Native American people groups in the Caribbean, along the Gulf Coast, look at these numbers. He said the population was reduced by 70%, 80%, even 90%. And now he's going to list the various ways that death came among the Native Americans. Go ahead.
Through a combination of warfare, famine, epidemics, and slavery.
Epidemics, we're talking about smallpox.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about gonorrhea. We're talking about syphilis. We're talking about the European diseases that came and afflicted the Native Americans. Go ahead.
And slavery. Biology gets much of this blame for this collapse. But as we shall see, it is impossible to disentangle the effects of slavery and epidemics. In fact,
Robert, pause. What is he saying in this? He says it's impossible. What is he saying? How it is impossible to disentangle the effects. What is he saying? He's saying, listen, if you had never brought your European white behind over here with your malice intentions, we would not have been inflicted by the biological diseases you carried with you. Go on.
In fact, a synergistic relationship existed between the two.
Between the biological demise and your malicious intent. You came with a gun intending to do harm. You came intending to pillage, kill, and steal. That's what you came. And it just so happened that you carried a disease that they had no biological defense to protect themselves against. Okay, now I want to look at another book. We're coming back to this book. I want to go to another book because he had a very interesting point that I want us to look at. Now, this book let's go to the title page. This book is a short account of the destruction of the Indies by Bartholomew de la Casa. And we've examined this book before in the past. We've shown photographs that are inside this book in the past. But we want to look at some things with that connects to what the first book has to say. And the author of the first book, he uses this book, as a matter of fact, as one of his source material. Okay.
Right there.
Wait a minute. Start here.
As for the continent, oh yes. As for the continent, yeah, do me that favor, please.
As for the continent, 'tis certain, and what I myself know to be true, that the Spaniards have ruined 10 kingdoms there, bigger than all Spain, by the commission of all sorts of barbarity and unheard of cruelties. They have driven away or killed all the inhabitants, so that all these kingdoms are desolate to this day and reduced to a most deplorable condition. Though this was formerly the best peopled country in the world, we dare assert without fear for incurring the reproach of exaggeration. He said we ain't afraid to speak what we're gonna speak. And the listener, you might think that we are exaggerating. We are not exaggerating with the account we're going to give, and we're not afraid. You might think we're exaggerating. We are giving you the unadulterated truth, is what he's saying with that line. That in the space of those 40 years in which the Spaniards exercised their intolerable tyranny in this new world, they unjustly put to death above 12 millions of people. 12 millions of people, counting men, women, and children. And it may be affirmed without injury to truth, upon a just calculation, that during this space of time, above 50 millions have died in those countries. This is a very interesting book. I encourage you all to go and get this book, buy this book, rent this book, and read this book. It talks about how when they had come into various villages, they would kill 30,000 right then and there, 40,000 right then and there. So they were slaughtering folks left and right, according to Bartholomew de la Casa. Okay. One more from Bartholomew. Okay. And it reads, the Spaniards who invaded these isles and boasted of their Christianity made use of two ways principally to exterminate the inhabitants. The first of which was an unjust and bloody war carried on with the utmost barbarity and cruelty. The other was that detestable policy which inspired them to massacre all that had any remains of liberty or endeavored to shake off their tyrannical yoke and to free themselves from so unjust and intolerable a slavery. For this, the bravest, most potent, and most warlike nations off the Indians attempted. So the Pope said, we will Christianize all of those that are heathens. And so when you go back to the 1400s, it was Pope Nicholas who had decreed this papal bull. And this papal bull, they were enslaving Native Americans. They were enslaving blacks. They were slaughtering blacks and slaughtering Native Americans. And so this is what he's talking about when he says policy. Okay. So this is a short account of the destruction of the Indies. Let's go back now to the other slavery. Let's go back to this book. Okay. And And here we have a very interesting comment that he makes, about Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, who was a Marine guy. He navigated the waters. He says, and remember also what we just read in Bartholomew and the policy. So bear that in mind with what we now come to read. And this guy, this author here, this man name again is Andreas Resendez. Leading up to this paragraph right here, he talks about Columbus being a businessman. Okay, so bear in mind there is the policy of the Pope. There is Christopher Columbus, who is a businessman. Okay, so here we are. This paragraph says, had Columbus's pilots pointed their compasses due west from the coast of Spain, they would have landed somewhere on the Chesapeake Bay, just south of modern day Washington, D.C. He said, so in other words, they could have just gone straight west across and came into the Americas. And also, building up to this paragraph, he talks about this prevailing ideology. This prevailing ideology by this man named, where is his name at?
Horse.
Huh? Right here. Right here.
Oh.
Nicholas Wade Gomez. Okay. And the prevailing ideology was that where you lived dictated your temperament as a person. So they wanted to go to the hot zone. Columbus wanted to go to the hot zone, looking to enslave and to pillage the people. Okay, so let's continue. Here we are in this paragraph right here. Okay, had Columbus's pilots pointed their compasses due west from the coast of Spain, they would have landed somewhere on the Chesapeake Bay, just south of modern day Washington, D.C. Instead, the admiral went to the Caribbean because, as Christopher Columbus put it, under that parallel of the world, close to the equator, more gold and things of value are found. More gold and things of value are found. A prominent cosmographer of the Spanish court elaborated on the same idea. All good things come from very hot regions whose inhabitants are black or dark brown. This is what Germain Ferrer de Blancs wrote in a letter to Columbus. And therefore, in my judgment, until your lordship meets such peoples, you shall fail to find an abundance of such things. So Columbus went looking for dark people. And what he wanted to do was to set up shop in the Americas after witnessing a post set up in Guinea. So he wanted the slave trade that was taking place in Africa. He thought to do the same thing in the Americas. That was the intentions of Christopher Columbus. Okay. Talk about wicked, man. Talk about wicked. Let's go here. Right here. Okay. Christopher Columbus knew. Let's start there. He says, regardless of, I'm starting right there, regardless of their skin color, Columbus knew these peoples were intelligent, but weaker and less spirited than Europeans, making them especially suitable as slaves. It is in the context of these assumptions, right? Because he's going off a false premise, widely shared by Europeans of the age of discovery, that we must understand Columbus's entries about the docility and ingenuity of the Indians, as well as his earliest slaving proposals. Why? Why early slaving proposals? He sends back on his first voyage. Christopher Columbus sends back, he takes back 12 captured men back to Europe, back to Spain with him. But these men, he doesn't necessarily use them as slaves per se. He uses them as, okay, let me befriend these individuals to learn the language, learn the culture, and they can also be my informants so that I can go back well educated to do my business. Dirty, ain't it?
Mm-hmm.
And oh, sorry, it wasn't 12. My apologies. Right here. It was 24. It was 24. He said 24. Okay. So this dude is crazy. As a matter of fact, let's read this right here. Columbus captured perhaps 24 Indians during his first voyage. Strictly speaking, these were not slaves, but showpieces intended as proof of his discovery. The admiral also hoped that these Indians would learn Spanish and serve as translators on subsequent expeditions. Some of them came from Cuba's north coast, close to a natural port that Columbus named Puerto Martes. On November 12th, 1492, while his ships surveyed the port and river, 6 Indians in a canoe paddled to the side of one of the caravels to trade. 5 native men climbed up and were easily imprisoned on the admiral's orders. You see that? So here they come, they thinking, okay, this is friendly. So what are we guilty of? The Native Americans and Negroes in that time period, being naive, being too naive. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. So he captures these men, and one of the men stayed on the boat, and that man barely escaped. Then comes, he says later on, another canoe approached, and this man, he begged to get on because they had captured the man's wife and 3 children. This is the craziness, man. Okay. Let's find the next entry point of discussion. Okay. So here we are. This is still, we're still dealing with Christopher Columbus. In his very first letter after his return, addressed to the royal comptroller, Luis de Santander, he promised gold, spices, cotton, and as many slaves as their majesties ordered to make from among those who were idolaters, because that is the root of the policy that Bartholomew talked about by Pope Nicholas. So they intended to make these folks slaves. The admiral's plan to ship natives to Europe was quite understandable given his ideas about the nature of the Indians, his anxieties about making his discovery economically viable, and the 1/10 of the proceeds of the sale of these captives that he would pocket according to the terms of capitulation. What we're talking about right here? Christopher Columbus he struck a deal with Ferdinand and Isabella, King and Queen of Spain. And in his deal, the deal that he struck was that he was going to receive 1/10 of everything that was sold, that was traded from the Americas, from the New World. Christopher Columbus was going to get 1/10 of it. So Christopher Columbus knew that one of the hot commodities right now is enslaving of people, slaves. So he intended to make a lot of money. Christopher Columbus did. There's your man, Christopher Columbus. Okay, let's go to the next entry of discussion. Okay, so it says, but even in its early days, Columbus could observe how a European stronghold on another continent could thrive by trading a variety of products, including humans, okay, which is really what I just spoke seconds ago.
Mm-hmm.
There is little doubt that the Admiral of the Ocean Sea intended to turn the Caribbean into another Guinea. Early in his second voyage to America, Columbus sent dozens of Carib Indians back to Spain with the first returning ship. Now, I learned once by another leader that the Carib Indians are of the tribe of Dan. I learned by another Israelite teacher, that the Carib Indians are of the tribe of Dan. Okay. Accompanying them was a candid letter to Ferdinand and Isabella. May your highnesses judge whether they ought to be captured, for I believe we could take many of the males every year, and an infinite number of women. An infinite number of women. Now, this author, Andres Resendez, does point out how the difference between slavery among Native Americans versus Negroes was the value placed on women versus the value placed on men for Negroes. Negroes, the value was placed on men. For Native Americans, the value was placed on women and children. And the reason for this is that, he said, the skill sets that the Native Americans brought to the table, the men, it wasn't skills that the Europeans necessarily wanted or needed, which was hunting. They didn't need hunters, okay? But the women who were very, very domesticated, they could they could make clothes, you know, so all the weaving of fabric and what have you. So
baskets.
all of that. Say that again. Go ahead.
No, I said baskets and different things like that. Clothes.
Yeah. And as far as the children go, they knew that they can indoctrinate the children. So it was, okay, we can indoctrinate the children. The women have a strong, motherly kind of way about themselves. So we can take the women, we can take the children, we'll off the men. We don't care about the men. This was the mind of the Europeans. Whereas with the Negroes, it was we want the strong manpower of the men among the Negroes. Okay. All right, let's go to the next point of entry. So now, this passage right here, I thought was cold-blooded. He says, so the king and queen, Ferdinand and Isabella, they reject the idea of enslaving these Native Americans. And Christopher Columbus, he is sold on the idea. He doesn't want to let go of the idea of utilizing these people as slaves. So he says, okay, I get it. I know what's going on. He says, this is what this man says. The opposition, I'm right here. I'm right there. The opposition of the Catholic monarchs was a serious blow to Columbus's plan for a transatlantic Indian slave trade. But the most important limiting factor was the economic development of the Caribbean. European colonists slowly realized that the lush archipelago was nowhere near the east or the Spiced Islands, but nonetheless possessed valuable natural resources. We do like this place for all the natural resources we can get from it. To extract these riches, many laborers were needed. He says, we need a workforce right here. So instead of trying to send these Native Americans across the Atlantic Ocean, especially since the king and queen is putting up a fuss, we'll just enslave them right here. Columbus himself explained it better than anyone else in a memorial, historical account in which he reflected on his lifelong accomplishments. He wrote that he would have sent many Indians to Castile, to Spain, and they would have been sold, and they would have become instructed in our holy faith and our customs. And then they would have returned to their lands to teach the others. Yet, according to the admiral, they stayed in the Caribbean because the Indians of Hispaniola were and are the greatest wealth of the island, because they are the ones who dig and harvest and collect the bread and other supplies and gather the gold from the mines and do all the work of men and beasts alike. That's cold-blooded, ain't it? So here's your man, Christopher Columbus. Okay. Two more points of entry. Two more points of entry for on this book. Okay. So here we have this gentleman here. Rodriguez Galado's inquest uncovered a microcosm of coercion and enslavement. No matter how serious or light their crimes had been, the natives, once inside the presidio, so a presidio is it's a line of military officers. It's a border, if you will. And so he's saying, in other words, how we read early on, they had those vagrant laws. He's talking about how, listen, we're going to find a way to enslave your red butt. You know, because they call Native Americans red man. When it's the European who's the red man. The Bible calls the European a red man. He says, so let me hit this again. No matter how serious or light their crimes had been, the natives, once inside the presidio, were compelled to work from dawn to dusk. 22 Indians labored in shackles, while the remaining 66 did not wear chains, but were constantly monitored. Since many of the prisoners were married, their wives and children also lived at the garrison. They made tortillas, ground pinola, a course of flour made of corn and seeds, and fetched water in return for food and clothes. Discipline was extreme. Minor infractions, such as being late for work, could result in 40 or 50 lashes. Some guards were sadistic, beating Indians to unconsciousness, burning their armpits with hot wax, and hanging them from their feet with their heads dangling over a fire. 3 Indians accused of being hichicheros at the pueblo of Onavas died after suffering horrifying head burns as presidial soldiers attempted to extract their confession. Even free Indians at Pitik were compelled to work. A native named Mateo Osemia declared that for 6 years he had been sent to work in a nearby mine. The Apoderado immediately noted that Mateo was a free Indian who had been paid for his work. But Mateo countered that instead of wages, he had received a work certificate from the mine and later had been forced to give up the certificate on the grounds that he was a prisoner of the presidio rather than a free worker. So you thought you was free? Nope. So even if we can't catch you up on some petty minor infraction, we gonna lie and say you belong to us. That's crazy.
Yeah, you couldn't do nothing about it.
There was nothing you could do about it. Okay. And let's continue on out with this right here. Similarly, Salvador Barruquia declared that for years, he had worked in the presidio as a carpenter. The apoderado affirmed that Salvador was not a prisoner, but a serviente libre, a free servant. To which the Indian replied that up to now, they do not allow me to leave, even though I wish to go back to my pueblo. I wish to go back to my home. They're like, no, nigga, you belong right here. Salvador received a nominal wage in food and clothes, but he was compelled to stay and work at the presidio. The difference between freedom and slavery at Pitik was deceiving. That's this man's account in this book, The Other Slavery. Okay, and let's take a look at one final book in all of this. What are your thoughts, Elder?
Well, I was just thinking, of course, how evil, just how it's overwhelming. I'm thinking about all the atrocities and the evilness that these people commit. No wonder, it's just, I thank God that he's letting us know in his book that he has someone that's going to come and save us or redeem us, but let us have some justice for what was done to our forefathers. That's where my mind is at.
This last book that we're going to look at for a few entries, The Life of Andrew Jackson by Robert V. Rimini. Okay, and as we all know, Andrew Jackson was one of the presidents of the United States of America. All right. First entry we want to take a look at. Okay, so this is during the time period of, he's not the president at this point in time that we're looking at right here, this particular entry. He is determined to annihilate the Creek Indians. The Creek Indians had started a confrontation. They came into one of the forts and killed some Europeans because they wanted the Europeans off their land. They wanted to send these Europeans. They said, go back to the sea from which you came from. So the author of this book writes the story from a point of view that the Native Americans are at fault. But I, as a reader of this book, you came destroying, and we read two books already where this Caucasian, this European, he indeed came. He came into the islands. Everywhere he came seeking to destroy, going all the way back to the late 1400s, 1492. Going all the way back to there. So here we are, some 400 years later, 300, close to 400 years, 1492, now it's 1814. And this Caucasian man has been coming, destroying. So who truly is the initiator? Well, if we look at history, this European man is the initiator. All right. Here is Andrew Jackson, a rock-like and determined general who had been formed by painful experience. If possible, Jackson's already cold and steely will was strengthened. He became a relentless, driving, indefatigable machine devoted to one solitary purpose: the destruction of his country's enemy. What did he become? He had a sole purpose in mind: to destroy the Native Americans. Jackson forged an army in the early months of 1814. Now he could get on with the war. So he goes about to have these folks destroyed. Okay, let's find the next entry. Okay, so by the end of all this fighting and so forth, wherein Jackson does defeat the Creek, here we are. The next day, Jackson ordered a count of the dead. Some 557 Indians were found on the ground. Coffee estimated as many as 300 Creeks dead in the river, and a few dozen bodies were later discovered in the woods. A total of approximately 900 Red Sticks killed. And they explain why they're called Red Sticks, because they painted themselves in this red, red coloring. Okay, so they called them Red Sticks. Few warriors, excuse me. Few warriors escaped the carnage. Jackson figured that no more than 15 or 20 braves got away. But the number may have been higher. 300 captives were taken, all but 4 of them women and children. His own casualties amounted to 47 dead and 159 wounded, along with an additional 23 friendly Creeks and Cherokees killed and 47 wounded. So these were, here are Native Americans siding with Europeans to their own demise.
I figured that.
Siding with Europeans to their own demise. Okay. Let me see here. Yeah, I want to read this too. I want to read this. Jackson was not satisfied with his incomparable victory. William Weatherford, Chief Red Eagle, had escaped him. So now this is the guy who initiated the attack that enraged Jackson to go full steam ahead after the Creek, and then later on to pursue all Native Americans. Okay. The chief was away from the Bend on the day of battle, and Mniwe, great warrior, a mixed blood, commanded the fighting. Mniwe was wounded 7 times and lay unconscious among the dead, but he revived, crawled into the river, found a canoe, and made his escape. Despite the disappointment of the loss of Weatherford, the power of the Red Sticks was irreparably broken. Okay, so in other words, there was for Jackson, I gotta annihilate y'all to no end. I gotta annihilate y'all to no end. Okay. Let's see. Battle at Horseshoe. Okay, here we go. Read this. The Battle of Horseshoe Bend was one of the major engagements of the War of 1812. Apart from the incredible number of men killed, it crushed the Indian will and capacity to wage war just when the British were about to land troops from the Gulf and provide the hostiles with an enormous supply of arms and ammunition. So for Andrew Jackson is fighting Native Americans, he's fighting the Spaniards, and he's fighting the British. It's not too far removed from the time that America had went to war with the British to be an independent country.
Correct.
So here are the Native Americans, and the British is supporting the Native Americans so that the British can still, claim control over the settlers who had come to this land. Okay, so the Battle of Horseshoe Bend was one of the major engagements of the War of 1812. Apart from the incredible number of men killed, it crushed the Indian will and capacity to wage war just when the British were about to land troops from the Gulf and provide the hostiles with an enormous supply of arms and ammunition. Had the Creeks not been defeated so decisively, they would have become a force of incalculable danger to the entire southern half of the United States. So this is, there's another part. Here we go. Start right here. A few days later, Weatherford himself walked into Jackson's camp and calmly claimed the protection that had been extended to the other chiefs, at the same time expressing his desire for peace for himself and his people. Old Hickory was astounded at Red Eagle's audacity. "I am in your power. Do with me what you please," said Weatherford. "I am a soldier. I have done the white people all the harm I could. I have fought them and fought them bravely. If I had an army, I would yet fight and contend to the last. But I have none. My people are all gone. I can now do no more than weep over the misfortunes of my nation." So by this, Jackson is like, okay, he spares him and tells him, all right, you don't try nothing else, and you're good. So Jackson inevitably uses this man to his advantage, to the demise of the Native Americans. To the demise of the Native Americans. Okay. Let's go to this next point of entry. Okay, so here we go. So now, again, the Creek have won. Jackson is victorious, and here we go. He arrived at Fort Jackson on July 10th, 1814, and immediately summoned the Creek chiefs, friendly and hostile, to a general meeting. When they assembled, he hardly acknowledged the help he had received during the war from friendly Creeks. See that? He don't give a damn. You betrayed your nation to help this European man, and he's showing you he don't give a damn about you.
Right.
He treated all the Indians in the same manner. For their crime, he told them, the entire Creek nation must pay. He demanded, this is crazy, and that we, go ahead. Sound like you want to say something.
No, I was just agreeing when you said it's crazy.
Yeah, you turn on your nation, thinking that this man, that is not about, it's not about race. It is. This man has perpetual hatred for you and your people. He doesn't care two squats about you. Let me continue. He demanded the equivalent of all expenses incurred by the United States in the war, which by his calculation came to 23 million acres of land. He demanded the equivalent of all expenses incurred by the United States in the war, which by his calculation came to 23 million acres of land. He said, you owe us 23 million acres of land. He wanted roughly 3/5 of the present state of Alabama and 1/5 of Georgia. In addition, the Creeks must cease all communication with the British and Spanish. They must acknowledge the right of the United States to open roads through Creek country and to establish military and trading posts wherever necessary, and they must surrender the instigators of the war. Ain't that something?
Right.
So they're going to try to talk to him, right? They're going to try to negotiate with him. Here's the outcome of them trying to negotiate with Andrew. When the interpreters finished translating Jackson's words, the chiefs retired to a private council to discuss the monstrous terms imposed on them by the man they now call Sharp Knife. The following day, they tried to convince Sharp Knife that his terms were harsh and unjust, but they spoke to a Stonewall Jackson. They reminded him that the chiefs there present had been friendly, that most of the Red Sticks had fled to Florida, and the protection of the Spanish. Sharp Knife just stared at them. In other words, y'all wasting y'all breath. I don't care what you say. You're not moving me one way, one bit. The Creek Nation, he growled, must be cut off from the mischief makers from the lakes. Until this is done, your nation cannot expect happiness nor mind security. This evening must determine, he said, I need an answer today. This evening must determine whether or not you are disposed to becoming friendly. Your rejecting the treaty will show you to be the enemies of the United States, enemies even to yourselves. He threatened them. He threatened them. And
Yep,
so
do
what
this or
did
else.
they right? So what did they do? They gave in. They gave in. Look what it says right here. What Jackson had done had the touch of genius. He had ended the war by signing a peace treaty with his Indian allies. Most of the surviving Red Sticks had fled to Florida and planned to continue their warfare. Thus, Jackson converted the Creek Civil War into an enormous land grab. Moreover, he ensured the ultimate destruction of the entire Creek nation. All the other Southern tribes would one day experience the same melancholy fate at the hands of General Andrew Jackson. This is American history, right before our eyes. And there are folks who argue and say that the Native Americans are not a part of the Israelites, the nation of Israel. Let's go to another point of entry. Okay, so after all the he after defeating the Creeks and so forth, a few more events take place. Now he is back to kind of settling down and living living a good life. I want to start right here, but before I do, I noticed I said he was living a good life. This man was bringing home $2,400 a year, plus $1,652 a year. Now, let's see here. I'm curious. So, am I looking at this right? $3,412 plus, because that other one said he was bringing home, was it $1,600?
Yeah.
Yeah, $1,600. So let's see what that is. Oh no! Wait a minute. Did I read that? I think I read that other one wrong. Oh, this is 37,000. $37,688 plus 37,688 plus 57,546. So 37 and 57.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute, 90 something.
95,000 is what he was making, doing nothing at this point in the game. So let's go back to that. Okay. So that's the money that he's taking home right now. Okay. Here we are. It says one of Jackson's, excuse me a second. Share something with the people. One of Jackson's principal duties during this period was visiting the various Indian tribes, Creeks, Cherokees, Chickasaw, and the Choctaw. Now, all these folks, we are ranging from, let's go back to our map. What we are ranging from, with all those tribes we just looked at, is parts of Louisiana, parts of Arkansas, parts of Mississippi, parts of Alabama, parts of Georgia, and parts of Tennessee. Okay, and remember now, is some of them had fled into Florida. Okay, and here, even on this map with the Trail of Tears, these folks were transplanted from their homeland, and we see even on this map, Choctaw Nation, Chickasaw Nation, Cherokee Nation have been brought into Oklahoma territory. Okay, let's go back to our book. In the area holding ceremonial talks with them and arranging land settlements in accordance with the several treaties that had been agreed upon. For one thing, he was directed by the administration to execute Article 9 of the Treaty of Ghent. This article stated that all possessions taken from the Indians subsequent to 1811 must be returned. So everything that the Europeans had taken, the Europeans have to return it to the Native Americans. Automatically, that required Jackson to return approximately 23 million acres of land he tore from the Creek Nation at the conclusion of the Creek War. So remember, Andrew Jackson told the Creeks, y'all lost that land. Now this article allowed the Native Americans to regain their territory. Okay? But Sharp Knife, Andrew Jackson, had no intentions of returning the land. He blithely ignored Article 9 and simply continued his policy of removing the Indians from the surrendered lands. Nobody stopped him, nobody dared. The Cherokees protested that a section of the Creek secession belonged to them. They appealed to the administration in Washington, and William H. Crawford, the new Secretary of War, accepted their argument, and in a treaty signed on March 22nd, 1816, returned 4 million acres of land that the Treaty of Fort Jackson claimed for the United States. What did Jackson do? Jackson raged. He was pissed off. He was pissed off. And then so Monroe comes into office And Monroe is going against this guy Crawford. Okay, so the two, Monroe and Crawford, are fighting for office. Jackson supports Monroe, and he did not stand Crawford because of this thing right here. Okay, now let's go to another point of entry. We're almost done. One of the principal tasks assigned to the commission was the necessity of fixing land boundaries between the various tribes and the United States. By this time, Jackson had certain definite ideas about how the government should treat the Indians. Oh, he does? And what's that? They had developed over many years, especially when the Creek War seriously jeopardized American efforts to combat the invasion of British troops from the Gulf of Mexico. Here he is in quotation. The lower country is too great importance to the Union because there's the ocean. Jackson wrote to President James Monroe for its safety to be jeopardized. Later, Jackson particularized many of his ideas about the Indians and how they should be treated. For one thing, I have long viewed treaties with the Indians an absurdity, he said, not to be reconciled to the principles of our government. The Indians are the subjects of the United States. I have always thought that Congress had such much right to regulate by acts of legislation all Indian concerns as they had of territories. In short, Indians had no rights if they conflicted with the security of the United States. The Indians live within the territory of the United States, he declared, and are subject to its sovereignty and subject to its laws. This is how this man thought. This is the thinking of this man. What kind of friend is that?
An evil friend.
I got just a few more entries. Just a few more entries. Here he goes. He says, after much haggling and with the help of a little bribery, the commissioners signed a treaty with the Cherokees on September 14th, 1816. In addition to forcing the surrender of an enormous tract of Cherokee land, look at that, bribery, right? And forcing land to the south of the Tennessee River, the agreement promised peace and friendship between the United States and the Cherokee Nation. Furthermore, as payment for the removal of these Indians, the United States granted 6,000 annually for 10 years to the tribe and 5,000 to be paid 60 days after the treaty was ratified. And all this was still a lie. None of these treaties did the United States hold to.
So they broke all those treaties.
They broke all these treaties. They stole all this land. This paragraph right here, I'm not going to read it, where it says the Chickasaw, he came to them with the same notion. And at the end, because they resisted, He said, look, all right, if you won't, we going to war. And so they too gave in, one after the other. This is what Andrew Jackson employed. Let me get 2 more points of entry. Okay. By the time Jackson had completed these negotiations, if not a few months earlier, he had definitely worked out in his mind the principal parts of his removal policy, a policy he would officially institute after he became president. The main thrust of the policy came from other statesmen, including past presidents, starting with Thomas Jefferson. In other words, the removal of these Native Americans has always been in the mind of these Europeans. Look what it says, starting with Thomas Jefferson. Starting with Thomas Jefferson. So they always thought this. And now it's President James Monroe. So they always thought this. So by the time Jackson comes into office, he is going to implement his plans. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to seize Florida. They want to seize Florida is what they wanted to do. And the last point of entry. Okay. He met the Choctaws at a place called Doak's Stand in Mississippi. And there he told them that they must remove if they wished to remain Indians. If not, he said, you must cultivate the earth like your white brothers. You must also in time become citizens of the United States and subject to its laws. It meant that they must be subject not only to the laws of the United States, but the laws of the states in which they resided. So go back, if you would, to 2nd Esdras, chapter 13. And start at verse 42.
It's chapter 13 in verse 42.
Yeah, start with 41.
All right. 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 41. But they took these counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt.
America, we've established that that's America.
That they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land.
So that's it. That
okay.
They might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. So they come to the Americas and they're going to strongly attempt to practice the laws. And there are other books that reveal that they were, they're quoting particular passages out of the Bible and so forth. So there are other books that allow us to see that these folks are indeed practicing the the laws, the Mosaic laws. But now, what does Andrew Jackson tell them? If you want to keep your life, if you want to keep your life, you will follow the laws of the United States and the laws of the states, the individual states.
Yeah.
Right?
And this is
So
why they had the phrase, when I say they, I'm talking about the Native Americans, that the white man speaks with a forked tongue. So, that's just saying that, hey, that the white man, the pale face, was a snake. That's why they called it the fork. They speak with a forked tongue. And so that goes all the way back to the serpent.
That's right.
That beguiled Eve. Well, yeah, that's why they say that phrase, that the white man speaks with a forked tongue, meaning that he is a snake, that serpent.
Well, so then, what shall we do? Okay, go to Ezekiel chapter 38 and start with, I want to start with verse 1.
The book of Ezekiel chapter 38 and verse 1. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against God.
Against Gog. Set thy face against Gog. Let's pause right there. Against Gog. Okay. So here is Bible Gateway. Okay. The entry of Gog. Are you able to read this?
It looked like Russian. Yeah. Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog. Gog is the ruler of Magog and the prince of Meshech and Tubal. The demonic and sinister leader of ungodly peoples far distant from Israel, whom he leads in a final assault against the people of God, but is ignominiously defeated by the intervention of Yahweh, whom the mountains of Canaan.
On the mountains of Canaan. Go ahead.
Upon the mountains of Canaan. The conflict is described in Ezekiel 38 and 39, and in summary form in Revelations 27 and 9. The origin of the name Gog is unknown. He has been identified with what is that? Gyges of Lydia, who is said to have expelled the individual in invading seminaries with my eyes are.
I'll take over.
On faith, yeah.
Invading Sumerians, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Josephus calls these folks Russians, if I'm not mistaken. So take me with a grain of salt on that one. With Syrian help, with Gaga mentioned in the Armana letters, with another Gaga, a Babylonian deity, and with Gagi, a ruler of the city of Sabi. Magog was probably located between Cappadocia and Media. Josephus says it refers to the Scythians. In Revelation chapter 20, verse 8, and the Scythians are the Iranians. In Revelation chapter 20, verse 8, Gog and Magog symbolically represent the godless nations of the world. With Gog are associated many peoples, Meshech, Tubal, of whom he is prince, Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, Sheba, Dedan, and Tarshish, all of whom come from widely separated parts of the earth, a mighty host like a cloud to do battle against Israel under the mighty God. But God's judgment comes upon the enemies of Israel. Every kind of terror is summoned by Yahweh against Gog, whose defeat is so great that his vast armaments serve as fuel for Israel for 7 years, and whose dead are so numerous that it takes all Israel 7 months to bury them. Let's go down to this paragraph right here. There are 3 major divergent interpretations of the story of God. Some hold it to present a literal description of a future attack on Israel by certain identifiable nations led by Russia. Others regard it as a symbolic description of some future event, either the final conflict of the nation of Israel with unidentified foes, or the final catastrophic struggle between the church and the forces of the world. Still others look upon it as a prophetic parable illustrating not a specific historical event, but a great truth. Which way do I go from all my readings of the Bible and so forth? Right here. Right here. And to further this, go to 2nd Ezra, chapter 15. Second Ezra, chapter 15, and we're going to start with verse 28.
All right, I got that highlighted. 2nd Ezra chapter 15 and verse 28. Behold, in horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, where the nations of the dragons of Arab shall come
Arabia.
out. Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Also the Carmanians.
Yeah, and the Carmanians are the Iranians.
That's right. I remember you telling me that. Also, the Carmanians raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come, and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians.
Now, this Assyrian in this context is talking about America. Go ahead.
31. And then shall the dragon have the upper hand.
When it says the dragon, then shall the dragon, who are we talking about? We're talking about the Arabs. Go ahead.
Having the upper hand, remembering their nature.
Remembering their nature. Why? In Genesis, it says that Ishmael shall be a wild man, and he shall have his hand shall be on everyone. Let's go there because I'm jacking that up. Go to Genesis. Genesis, believe chapter 17, if I'm not mistaken.
Say chapter what?
Bear with me. I'm looking for it. Chapter 16. And start at verse 11.
Genesis chapter 16 and verse 11. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord had heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren.
Of all his brethren. Okay. He shall be a wild man. That is his nature. He shall be a wild man. Okay. Go back to verse 31.
Second Ezra chapter 15 and verse 31. And then shall the dragon have the upper hand, remembering their nature. And if they shall turn themselves, conspiring together in great power to persecute them, then this shall be troubled, bled, and keep silence through their power, and shall flee. And from the land of the Assyrians shall the enemy besiege them, and consume some of them, and in their host shall be fear and dread and strife among their kings.
Among their kings, among their leaders and rulers of who? The Americans, this European nation. Okay? So now back to Ezekiel.
Okay.
Chapter 38, verse 1.
Thank you. The book of Ezekiel, chapter 38 and verse 1. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against God, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with the bucklers and shields, all them handling swords.
Go on.
Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shields and helmets.
So if we're understanding Gog to be Russia, if that is the proper understanding, Persia, those are the Iranians. Those are the Iranians, and even in today's news, the Iranians and Russia are getting along. Their business dealings and so forth with all of this Russia-Ukraine going on, Russia and Iran or their relationship is getting stronger. So that's Persia for you. Ethiopian, that's Ham. Those are Africans. And Libya, Africans. Go on, continue.
Ezekiel 38:6. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands.
All his bands is talking about his armies. All his bands talking about his armies. Go ahead.
And many people with thee. Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. After many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou
will be a guard unto who? The children of Israel. Be a guard unto who? The children of Israel. Go ahead.
After many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword.
In the latter years. In the latter years. So we're talking at the end of it all. We haven't reached that point yet. So this is prophetic word that is yet to come to fruition. Go ahead.
And is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always wasted. But it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely all the time, all of them. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land. Thou and all thy bands, and many people with thee. Thus saith the Lord God, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought.
So you're gonna come, you're gonna come, and more or less you're going to deliver the children of Israel. You're gonna be a protection to the children of Israel. And at the same time, after a little while, you're gonna get some evil thoughts in your mind against the children of Israel. Go ahead.
11. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates.
Who is this that dwells safely? The children of Israel. And so you're going to have in your mind, let's go and overtake them. Go ahead.
12, to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thine hand upon the desolate place that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nation, which have gotten cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land.
You didn't care nothing about them in the initial, because why? They was in a desolate land, and you thought, them niggas gonna do in that desert. They ain't gonna cultivate nothing. Nothing grows there. It's dead. But after a while, things are going to prosper. And you're gonna say, look what these niggas doing. Let's go in and take them over. Go ahead.
Ezekiel 38:12. Sheba and Dedan, and the merchants of the I'm getting that feedback now. And the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof, shall say unto thee, art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? Therefore, son of man, prophesy and say unto Gog, thus saith the Lord God, in that day when my people of Israel dwelleth safely, shalt thou not know it?
Shalt thou not know it? When that day comes, at things are starting to go well, because the children of Israel, there's going to be a portion of the children of Israel who are going to walk according to God's laws. And they're going to say to themselves, you know, yo, let's go here. We will come to this land right here that is nobody wants it, and we're going to come here. And the Lord's going to bless them because they're walking according to righteousness. And you're going to think, wow, look at these folks. Let's go and take them over. And we're going to ask the question. So you think to come and do us wrong? And then they of Sheba and Dedan, merchants of Tarshish, you're going to ask the question. You going to do them wrong? You going to go after them? I thought you were sent to protect them and to help them get free. Go ahead.
Therefore, son of man, prophesy and say unto God, thus saith the Lord God, in that day when my people of Israel dwell safely, shalt thou know it.
Go on.
And thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company and mighty army.
Go on.
And thou shalt come up against my people of Israel as a cloud to cover the land. It shall be in the latter days, and will bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me, when I shall be sanctified in thee, O Gog, before their eyes. Thus saith the Lord God, art thou he of whom I have spoken in old time by my servant, the prophet of Israel, which prophesied in those days many years that I would bring thee against them, and it shall come to pass.
What I'm gathering out of this is that this whole thing with Russia and Ukraine, okay? This thing is going to spill over. America is going to lose in the end. America is going to lose in the end. And then Gog is going to be destroyed thereafter. Gog is going to be destroyed thereafter. Okay.
Gog.
All right. Let me finish the reading here.
Okay.
Thus said, this is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 17. Thus saith the Lord God, art thou he of whom I have spoken in old time by my servants, the prophets of Israel, which prophesied in those days many years, that I would bring thee against them? And it shall come to pass at the same time when God shall come against the land of Israel, saith the Lord God, that my fury shall come up in my face. For in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath have I spoken. Surely in that day there shall be a great shaking in the land of Israel, so that the fishes of the sea and the fowls of the heaven and the beasts of the field and all creeping things that creep upon the earth and all the men that are upon the face of the earth shall shake at my presence. And the mountains shall be thrown down, and the steep places shall fall, and every wall shall fall to the ground. And I will call for a sword against him throughout all my mountains, saith the Lord God. Every man's sword shall be against his brother, and I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood. And I will rain upon him and upon his bands and upon the many people that are with him, an overflowing rain and the great hailstones, fire and brimstone. Thus will I magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am the Lord. All right. And with that, we say shalom. We hope you got something out of tonight's lesson. Hit the notification bell, hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you next go around. All right, shalom. Most High in Christ bless.